I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to another episode of Old's Oscar Countdown. And this week we're going to be looking at the Best Actress video, breaking down who I think will get nominated, as well as a couple of possible contenders to ultimately help you with your predictions. But if you're new to the series, welcome. This is what we've been doing for the past couple of weeks, and now we're on our 10th season. So, 9 years full of Oscar predicting on our 10th season now, doing this. Essentially every week we break down a different category, doing a deep dive into who I think will get nominated. Ultimately, though, to help you with your own predictions, giving the landscape, helping you kind of with some stats, and ultimately what I think is going to happen. But as we know, if you're a longtime Oscar fan, things change across the entire season. So I'm also going to be covering those rises and falls and giving predictions for other award shows like the Golden Globes or Critics' Choice or all that good stuff. So if you enjoy the channel, feel free to subscribe. Mondays at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, there's almost always a video. But as we get a little bit later on into the season, we'll be doing multiple videos a week. So you can subscribe to the channel just so you don't miss out on those videos. And as always, I always encourage you to comment below. Let me know your thoughts on this category. I want this to be a space where we can kind of go back and forth and talk about, our thinkings and who we think is going to get nominated and whatnot. So let me know your predictions for Best Actress down below, or if you have any comments on my predictions, that's okay too. And just before we get into things, if you want to jump around and hear my thoughts on a certain actor, as with all my other videos, there are timestamps in the description below. Just take a look at that. You can jump around to hear my thoughts on individual actors, or even if you want to come back to these videos, what did Connor have to say back then about Cynthia Erivo? You can always go back and watch these videos in mini clips if you'd like. But without further ado, let's jump into this. Starting off with my Best Actress predictions. My first prediction, I'm going to go with Jessie Buckley for Hamnet. I had the pleasure of seeing this at the Canadian premiere at TIFF. I think a really rapturous response. One of the reasons why that movie ended up winning the TIFF People's Choice Awards was because of, the kind of emotion in that room. So I kind of understand and moved by the effect that I think this movie will have, which is that I think it's a real Best Picture contender, not only to get nominated, but also potentially to win. And if I think that is a possibility, well, then you have to start thinking about paths. Oftentimes when we think of Best Picture winners, they don't just win Best Picture, right? They win Best Director and Best Actress, or other categories like Screenplay. They win a couple of them, and then, they ultimately win Best Picture, because if they think it's the best movie of the year, they oftentimes think it has the best directing or the best acting and things like that. So you have to think about paths. And with Hamnet, if I think it's going to win Best Picture, well, what's its path? Well, one of its major kind of awards that I think it's going to pick up, regardless even if it's going to win Best Picture, is Jessie Buckley for Best Lead Actress. I'm very confident in her ability to get nominated, and also her chance at a win. Not only am I a believer in the movie, which of course helps the fact that if people really like this movie, they kind of have to really like Jessie Buckley's performance in the movie. I do see it similarly to last year with Mikey Madison in Honora, or even something like Michelle Yeoh for Everything Everywhere All at Once, where if you like the movie so much, you almost have to like the main actor here, in the case of Jessie Buckley, who is the main actor. Some people, or if you've seen the trailers, you may think it's a two-hander between her and Paul Mescal. He could maybe be argued for a lead, but he is, I'd say, mostly supporting. There are long stretches of the movie without him. And the emotional climax of the movie really, I do think, surrounds Jessie Buckley and her performance and what she's giving. So if you connect to the movie emotionally and you really like the movie, you almost have to like Jessie Buckley and what she's doing in her performance here. I really do think she is the clear frontrunner right now, not only to get nominated, but also is in a great position to win. Just from like an Oscar feel standpoint as well, she feels like an Oscar kind of a future winner, where she's been nominated once, hasn't won though, still well respected, been in movies that have been nominated for Best Picture, so she's building herself a resume. But she's still not super old and isn't in that legend status. She's still a young, exciting actress. They like their younger actors versus the older actors in the Best Actress categories, really in the female acting categories. I don't necessarily know why that is, but the term ingenue exists for a reason. Jessie Buckley does still fit into that category. And then the performance itself and her character does have some great range to it, where it starts off as very mysterious, then it becomes a little bit more romantic, then it becomes more tragic and heartbreaking. So there is just like a variety to her performance style within the movie as well. So I think it's simple in the sense of, I think Hamnet could potentially win Best Picture. I think it's a really strong Best Picture contender. If that's the case, well then its path to winning Best Picture is someone like a Jessie Buckley winning. And if we do think it's going to get nominated for Best Picture, at the very least, Jessie Buckley should get nominated here. And we think it's going to get nominated for Best Picture in short, just because that TIFF People's Choice Award win, a big response out of Telluride, well-respected filmmaker who's already won Best Actress and Best Picture before. So the path is there and it's laid out there for Hamnet and Jessie Buckley. Even if Hamnet doesn't win Best Picture, I think Jessie Buckley can win. She is right now my clear frontrunner. Then my second pick, I went with Renate Reinsve for Sentimental Value. This is a performance that you can say very similar things as Jessie Buckley's. It's just maybe slightly less in every little bit of a category. So she's in a movie, Sentimental Value, which potentially could win Best Picture, but maybe just slightly less of a chance than Hamnet right now. She's great in the movie. She has this great range as well, very emotional at times, but also kind of introspective. But she's maybe in just a little bit less of the movie. There's not a 0% chance that she potentially campaigns in Best Supporting Actress for this movie, because there are large stretches of the movie where you could debate whether or not she is the true lead. I still think she will campaign and ultimately get nominated in this category, in part because of the success of the movie. This is a movie that did resonate, getting second place at the TIFF People's Choice International Award. It had a very great response out of Cannes, winning the Grand Prix there. So it's been a really well appreciated, critically acclaimed movie from a well-respected director. But like I said, similar to Jessie, where she's a little bit less known as a name. She hasn't been nominated before. She hasn't been in a movie that was nominated for Best Picture. So this would be kind of her coming out party, I think, for the Oscars, in a movie that I expect to be nominated for Best Picture, in an emotional part, a key part within the movie, but maybe not the true lead. And oftentimes when we see these acting categories, the winners are actors who are in every frame of the movie. And you think about the movie, you can't not think about them. She's a little bit more of an ensemble. Sentimental Value is more of an ensemble. So I guess there is a chance that she campaigns for supporting, but I don't think she will ultimately. That's the one caveat with this pick. It's another kind of a simple one-to-one where I think Sentimental Value is getting nominated for Best Picture. She's a key part of why that movie succeeds. She is, whether it be Worst Person in the World, which some of the Academy members we know definitely saw. She is starting to build her resume as a great actress, and playing an actress within the movie itself will only, therefore, appeal even more so to the actors who vote on the acting branch and who gets nominated for the Oscars. Then my third pick, I went with Cynthia Erivo for Wicked for Good. This is one that I'm going to keep relatively short just because I think the math is very simple and clear. And that is, I expect Wicked for Good to be nominated for Best Picture. My one caveat is I haven't seen the movie, so maybe it's a huge stinker and a bomb, and it isn't well received and doesn't get any Oscars attention, and that's it, and she doesn't get nominated. There's maybe also a slight caveat that maybe Ariana Grande also campaigns for Best Lead Actress, but we have to assume what happened last time. What happened last time was Wicked was really well liked. Cynthia Erivo was nominated for Best Actress, Ariana Grande Best Supporting Actress. I'm assuming that's exactly going to happen again this time. That's going to be the split, and it's going to get nominated for Best Picture. And if all that exists, why wouldn't she get nominated? They liked her for her performance last time. Now I think there's going to be less songs, particularly if it's the second half of the stage musical. There's going to be less songs, more drama, more opportunities for her to act. Now that she's essentially the outcast within the story, she'll be able to play somewhat of a tragic anti-hero type of a figure, which will give her a lot of chances for strong emotionality and big kind of speechifying type scenes. Like I said, I haven't seen the movie yet. That, though, based on that seeing the Broadway play and knowing where the story is eventually going to go, it does give her a lot of opportunities that I think they're eventually going to show within the movie itself. So I want to keep this one short, pretty simple. She got nominated for the last movie, which was literally last year. Theoretically, nothing should have changed. They should still like this character. They should still like Cynthia Erivo's performance within it. So as long as Wicked for Good is a somewhat satisfying conclusion to this story, then I think people will want to reward Cynthia for being emotional in her great singing, as well as her great acting, which I think this will show off a little bit more as you have a little bit less recognizable songs. Then my fourth prediction, I'm going to go with Emma Stone for Bugonia. And this is really where the fun starts. These last two spots, I think I'm pretty confident in those top three getting nominated, with some slight possibilities of maybe Renate goes to supporting actress, or maybe Ariana Grande moves up to lead actress. But assuming everything is going to be pretty normal with things, those top three are pretty solid. I'm very confident in those three. Then there's a steep drop off, and now it goes like, well, like with most categories, the fourth and the fifth slots are really difficult to predict. But I'm going to talk about right now Emma Stone for Bugonia, and ultimately why I decided to choose her in this slot and why I picked her over some of the others. And part of it has to do with the consistency of my predictions. So right now I have Bugonia in for Best Picture. I also have Jessie Plemons in for Best Actor. So if that's the case, I kind of want to, see the path. If I'm really kind of betting on Bugonia, then there's some possibilities that if it's getting in for Best Picture, it's not just getting in for Best Picture, it's also getting Adapted Screenplay, and then one of these two acting awards. I think it's probably most likely to get Adapted Screenplay, and then the next category that's most likely to get would be Best Actress here, and in part it's because this is Emma Stone, and this is two-time Academy Award winner Emma Stone for the Best Actress category, not for Best Supporting Actress. She's won this category twice within the last decade, including just a couple of years ago. Oh, and by the way, the movie she won a couple of years ago, oh yeah, that was for another Yorgos Lanthimos movie. And then she's also been nominated for her previous Yorgos Lanthimos movie before that, 2018's The Favourite. So she's been nominated multiple times for Yorgos Lanthimos' movies. Well, guess what? Bugonia is a Yorgos Lanthimos movie. Who's to say she won't get nominated again? So this is a very well-liked actress, nominated many times, won a couple of times recently as well, in these types of films that the Academy has liked, Yorgos' past movies. And then you think about the role itself. The role itself is very showy. If you've seen the trailer, you know that she actually shaved her head for this role. That's something that I think a lot of actors who are the people within the Academy, the actors branch, vote on who's going to get nominated. Just so you know that process. It's not the cinematographers voting on who's going to get nominated. Now, they eventually vote on who they think is going to win, but in terms of nominations, we have to do this. And I think the actors, any actors, will really appreciate Emma Stone's kind of bravery as a woman to shave her head for a part. It's something, if it's a man, a little bit more common. Maybe they already have some sort of male pattern baldness to shave their head. It's nothing, right? But for a woman to do it, it is a little bit more extreme, more brave, I think. And I think a lot of members of the Academy will see that as, just as an acting point of view, a huge amount of commitment to this role. And then I haven't seen the movie yet, but if you hear reviews, they really do praise her and Plemons as this kind of a two-hander, this kind of chamber piece with not a lot of actors. So I'm assuming there's going to be a lot of kind of mania in her performance and a lot of kind of desperation. I've seen the movie it's based on as well, and this is really kind of a juicy part in that sense. And then finally, because I have it in for Best Picture, it has to get other nominations. So it really has this trifactor of, I think Emma Stone is really well liked. We know that. So why won't they really like her new performance from a Yorgos Lanthimos movie? Then I think that, the role itself is very showy and involved, and there's just a deep level of commitment. In the same way they like Christian Bale for gaining and losing weight, I think they're going to appreciate Emma Stone for this kind of physical transformation. And then the third thing is that I think it's going to get nominated for Best Picture. And I think it's going to get in for Screenplay. And I think it's going to get in for Best Actress and maybe Best Actor, and gets in for Best Picture. Oftentimes, movies that get nominated for Best Picture, and that helps in the acting categories. If you just look at last year, the 5 actresses nominated for Best Actress all had their movies nominated for Best Picture. That's usually the case. Not always, more so in the male acting categories, but it just helps because we know that they like their movie. So if I'm kind of thinking about my predictions, and I encourage you to do this as well, kind of take like a wholesale look at it, it would be odd for you to, let's say, I have Jessie Plemons and Emma Stone and Best Adapted Screenplay, but I don't think Bugonia is going to get nominated. In the same way, if you have Bugonia for Best Picture and then none of the others, that wouldn't make sense. Try to have kind of a holistic point of view. You have to kind of think of the story within your predictions. And right now, these aren't my final predictions, but right now, because I have Bugonia in for Best Picture, it made sense for me to include Emma Stone here as well. Then my 5th prediction, I'm going to go with Chase Infiniti for One Battle After Another. And this was a tough one to predict, and one that I didn't think I was going to predict when I sat down to kind of make my final predictions and think of my thoughts and do my research. But I kept coming back to Chase Infiniti for a couple of reasons. And one real main reason, which is that I think she's going to be carried by her movie. And that is to say, oftentimes we see Best Actress contenders or acting categories, really in any of these categories, come from Best Picture nominated movies. Oftentimes, whether it be last year, Fernanda Torres beating out Pamela Anderson for The Last Showgirl, or whether it be, you could say, Leslie Manville and Phantom Thread beating out someone like a Holly Hunter in The Big Sick. Oftentimes we see an actress who was not really on our radars get nominated at the Oscars for the Best Actress, the Best Supporting Actress category, or Best Supporting Actor, or what have you, get nominated and beat out the kind of critical darling. I mentioned up top, this is our 10th season of doing the Oscar prediction. So I've seen a lot of things, and I just get constant reminders of like, Ethan Hawke was super well liked in First Reformed and was critically acclaimed, and he didn't get in for the Oscars. And ask Danielle Deadwyler, who got nominated for everything, and she still didn't get nominated at the Oscars. It's because the Oscars is what we're talking about ultimately, not the precursors. The precursors can help indicate things, but we are talking about the Academy Awards. And what they tell us is that they like certain movies, and when they like a certain movie, they like to nominate it across the board. It is very common for an acting nomination to come from a Best Picture nominated movie, and it makes sense. If it's your favorite movie of the year, you like its acting probably, or you liked its screenplay, or what have you. And that's something that we can kind of consistently see over and over again, particularly now that we have an expanded 10 lineup of nominees. It's even more of a reason that, it's very more likely nowadays for one of these nominations and one of these nominated actors to be from a Best Picture nominated movie. And it's a challenge to not be in a Best Picture nominated movie, to be the only nomination from your movie. Like I mentioned just last year, we saw that with Pam Anderson in something like The Last Showgirl. And we've seen these critics types movies get appreciated by the critics. That's why I kind of call them critics types movies. But they maybe only get one nomination. If they only get one nomination, it's somewhat rare. Because ultimately, the question becomes, did they see the movie? And if they didn't see the movie, then they're not going to nominate them. And it's unfortunate that way that sometimes the Academy and Academy members just vote for the movies that they've seen, the movies that have buzz. And what's a movie that has buzz? One battle after another. Oftentimes referred to as one of the best movies of the decade. I think it's going to be a very strong Best Picture contender. I think it's going to get a lot of nominations. I think it's going to be very well liked. And if it's very well liked, who's to say Chase Infiniti won't be kind of carried by that sense? And then that's kind of the big reason. I think the success and the strength of the movie really will help someone like a Chase Infiniti potentially get a nomination. The number two aspect is she is a exciting young actress. She is kind of an ingenue, and we mentioned this earlier in the episode, but the Academy appreciates younger actresses over older actresses, particularly in this category. You saw Mikey Madison, the younger actress, beat Demi Moore for The Substance. The year before that, we see Emma Stone, who I believe was younger than Lily Gladstone at the time, beat her up. It is something that we kind of see at least consistently over the past couple of years, and even throughout the history of Hollywood, whether it be Brie Larson winning for The Room or Jennifer Lawrence winning for Silver Linings Playbook. So we do see this happen where there's just a sense of this someone is new and exciting and maybe could lead movies. And Chase Infiniti, because she's a younger actress and wants to kind of maybe potentially get more lead roles and to kind of expand her career, I think will be more willing to do campaigning. We've seen this with the male actors of someone like an Austin Butler when he was kind of fresh on the scene with Elvis. He did a lot of campaigning but to potentially win and get that nomination. And now you see him as a big main lead star of a lot of movies in the same way Rami Malek did that with Bohemian Rhapsody. There is a kind of playbook of a young actor who's not really well known, which is the case of here Chase Infiniti, to kind of present themselves as a lead actor who could lead movies and be a big movie star. And I think because she's young and wants to establish herself, she's going to be willing to campaign. In the same way, maybe these older actresses who already have a career maybe won't do the extra effort to do as much campaigning or to do as much Q&As and things like that a younger actress like Chase Infiniti, who really needs to establish her career, will do. So ultimately, I thought, she's going to do the campaigning. She's a young actress. She's going to be exciting. That's going to appeal to this Academy. And then the movie is super well liked. So there are some concerns I have for it. Mostly the fact that she could have campaigned in Best Supporting Actress. She's not the true lead of the movie. There are large stretches where she's not in the film. That being said, ultimately, I think it's also an underrated factor that I think if you connect to the movie emotionally, that you don't just think this is a cool Leonardo DiCaprio action movie with some great, directing. I think if you connect with the movie emotionally, you connect with her third act in particular and kind of certain lines without spoiling anything that she delivers that are really emotionally powerful and moving. If you do connect with the movie, you really connect with her performance and her character. So assuming the members of the Academy actually connect with the movie emotionally, then I think that will also be transferred into Chase and her performance. And then you want to talk about Paul Thomas Anderson as a filmmaker. 3 acting nominations for The Master, 2 for Phantom Thread, 2 for Boogie Nights, 1 for Magnolia, 1 nomination and a win for There Will Be Blood. When he has kind of Oscar-type movies, it's frequent for him to get his acting as actors nominated. So if we think Leonardo DiCaprio and maybe we think Tiana Taylor, then who's to say maybe not Chase Infiniti as well? That's my thinking there. It's not from a she was so amazing in the movie and she's the clear lead actress. It kind of goes against some of my standard Oscar principles, but I want to consider the fact that this is a really strong movie for the Oscars, and she is campaigning in Best Lead Actress. and she is the emotional center of the movie. So why not her? I challenge you all as well to kind of consider her in your predictions. I know for a lot of us, we were kind of penciling her in for Best Supporting Actress. And then when I heard the news, I was like, oh, well, she's not going to make the five. She's not in the movie. No, she's not a true lead. But then you start thinking back on it, the emotional center. Paul Thomas Anderson's movies usually get a lot of acting nominations. And then, eventually the numbers kind of came to pass, and I included Chase Infiniti here in my predictions. But for my possible contenders, these are still very strong contenders who could get nominated. These aren't my final locked-in predictions by any means. So let's talk about them as well. My first possible contender, I have Amanda Seyfried for The Testament of Anne Lee. I also had the pleasure of seeing this film at TIFF, and it's I'd be thrilled if she got nominated because it's a really terrific film, one of my favorite movies of the year. That being said, most of my favorite movies of the year don't get nominated for the Oscars, so maybe that's the reason why I'm a little bit hesitant for the film. The positives, though, the pro side of it, is that it's kind of got everything that the Academy likes. It's a movie that is absolutely in love with its protagonist and this performance. If you like the movie, you have to like the kind of main lead performance at it. She sings, she dances, she grieves. There's like this huge, wide range of emotions that I think actors in particular will appreciate. So Connor, why am I not including it in my predictions? Well, I have concerns if anyone will see it. And that's, I think, the big theme of this episode. The reason why I have Chase Infiniti and not Amanda Seyfried or my next possible contender, Rose Byrne, is because I'm not sure if people will see this movie. This is a movie that I don't think is going to get nominated for Best Picture. We'll be lucky if it got nominated for production design or score. And oftentimes we don't see as many sole nominations in these acting categories, particularly now that we have an expanded lineup of 10 for Best Picture. The Academy in recent years has been leaning towards nominating actors from movies that they liked, which means movies that are nominated for Best Picture. Now, the pro side as well, and why I think Amanda Seyfried is still in my number 6 position, is that let's not forget that when she was campaigning for Mank, she did not get nominated for BAFTA, she did not get nominated for SAG, and yet she got nominated at the Oscars. So we know that, if anything, they will appreciate Amanda Seyfried because they appreciate her as an actress. But I still have some concerns as well, where I guess a pro side would be Searchlight Pictures, who is doing the campaigning for this film and bought this film. Bought this film, I think, in part to get nominations, so they're going to maybe really push the movie. That being said, it's also having a Christmas release date. And will enough people see it by the time the Oscars roll around? Will SAG see it? Probably not. So then you're really relying on BAFTA. And then if she doesn't get a BAFTA, you're really just going to assume that the Academy just really likes her. I don't know if I'm going to be in a position to really feel confident in that, to say a movie that's never gotten nominated in any precursors, who's probably not going to get production designer or all these other nominations, is going to surprise and get in. Like I said, the performance is very involved. It's very moving. The movie also, I'm concerned a bit, will be slightly polarizing. I don't know if everyone's going to love the movie. So there's ultimately just too many things. Late release date, polarizing, maybe performance. The movie's not going to get a whole bunch of nominations. Will not people see it? There's too many these aching questions that I have that made me put it on the outside, but she is absolutely a contender based on the performance alone, based on the fact that Searchlight did pick up the movie, so they are a believer in it. They are going to campaign from it. This is a well-respected distributor who does not have a potential Best Picture nomination. Therefore, there's a strong chance that they're going to try to get as many nominations as possible from these other types of categories. So Amanda Seyfried being one strong contender, but ultimately I had her on the outside. Then my other possible contender, I went with Rose Byrne for If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You. Just saw this yesterday in advance of recording this episode and totally get the praise. She is great in the movie. The movie is totally about her. She is the true lead. It barely goes away from her in terms of showing other characters. It really is just always in her point of view, always close-ups, always tight, always following her around, as we see essentially a woman have a mental breakdown and completely lose her mind. And it's a very showy performance in that sense without being so over the top and so crazy. She does have moments to really burst out, but it really is, I think, ultimately very well done and nuanced performance of someone losing their mind and the burdens of one thing after another, kind of in this anxiety-filled point of view. The issue, though, is that the movie, I don't think will be very well seen. I don't think this is a movie that's going to get a bunch of other nominations by the Academy, that is. So it really needs a lot of critical support, which, by the way, I think it will get. But even that is not a guarantee. Like I mentioned earlier in the episode, ask Ethan Hawke for First Reformed, who won all the critics' prizes. Ask Marianne Jean-Baptiste, who won all the critics' prizes for Hard Truths. And still those actors didn't get nominated for, the Oscars. That happens, and that's a fact because their movies maybe get in for screenplay and maybe nothing else. And If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You is in that similar kind of a fashion. It's not going to get nominated for Best Picture. It's really a Rose Byrne acting play. And if she doesn't get nominated, it's probably not going to get anything. I'm not going to bet on that type of a movie. I'd rather bet on a movie like One Battle After Another, which I know is going to get nominated for director and picture and be well seen and be well liked. And then ultimately, I have a question about the movie itself. Now that I've seen the movie, and it's very similar to what other people are saying about it, it is anxiety riddled. It's kind of a tough watch. And it's even tougher, I think, to recommend. Because you go, it's a really great capture of someone losing their mind and being anxious. And it's very well done because it's a perfect encapsulation of that feeling. But it's also a very difficult movie to recommend and say, hey, you should definitely check out this movie where you're going to feel really bad and feel anxious the entire time. And it's almost difficult to sit through. It's kind of a difficult movie to watch. And if you're an Oscar voter doing some cramming, are you going to check out this movie, which has that kind of a tagline just for one performance? Or are you going to maybe see a little bit more of an easier to watch movie, like Is This Thing On with Bradley Cooper or something like that? Those are the types of questions that the Academy members do have. And ultimately, I'm concerned mostly with the fact that I don't think this movie will be seen by enough Academy members to have enough support to get her nominated here. That being said, I'd be totally happy to include her in my predictions if she starts to get some of these precursors, if she really starts to sweep the critics' prizes, LA Film Critics Circle, New York Film Critics Circle, all those types of smaller critical groups. If she starts to win the Best Lead Actress prize in multiple ones, I think that will gain enough steam to kind of convince Academy members to go out on a limb and watch this film. I'm just not betting on that fact, which is why, there's just too many hurdles for her to overcome, which is why she's still in my possible contention. But that's about it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you comment below. Let me know your best actress predictions, your thoughts on this video, and stay tuned to next week. We're going to be covering the Best Supporting Actor category Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, as always. But that's about it. Until next time, stay tuned.